This section we will explain what type of LCD connection to the PCB. We know that the LCD is a kind of glass. It needs to connect to the PCB, to the main board, then to operate. But how we can connect it? There are several ways to do that. Depends on different application, we will choose the right connection. The first is a heat seal. Heat seal means that this is heat seal paper, and there are conducting traces, and there are hot melt adhesive on the connector. Then we use a heat to press it to connect to the LCD. Another end also use a hot to press it to connect to the PCB. So it is very simple and very low cost, and also the heat seal paper very thin. It is very flexible, but because it is only depends on the hot adhesive to connect to the LCD and the PCB, it is not very reliable. So here is an example of the heat seal connector. For that, you can see it is connected to the LCD and use a hot press to connect it. So it is very flexible. It's very flexible, can bend so whenever you like. So, but it is not a very reliable connection, and most of the case use a calculator, and some consumer product. Another connection is a zebra. You can see, it is the black and white traces here. It's like a zebra. Actually the black traces have a carbon inside to make the connection. But zebra is a kind of rubber, so it is very elastic. So we need the pressure to press between the glass and the LCD to connect it. So it is pretty easy and pretty low cost. But the problem is that when there is some vibration, so the rubber can lose the contact. Here's some example for that. Yeah, you can see it's kind of zebra connection. If I pull it apart, maybe you can see it is a black traces here. So it is pretty flexible, but you need the pressure. You need to press the glass here and the PCB here. You need to press it to make the contact. So sometimes not very convenient. Another way to connect it is a pin connection. There's a lot of metal pins to connect with the LCD and the PCB. You can see here is an example. It's a pin here. You can see a lot of pin here. So from here it is click to the LCD and glue it to the LCD, and here use some soldering to solder to the PCB. So it is you can see it is a very simple structure, and you just click to the LCD and then solder it on the PCB, through the through holes. It is very easy to use, but because each connection need metal, so it is pretty expensive for that. But it is pretty reliable because it's a very robust connection. And another one is FPC. FPC means flexible printed circuit. It is another name is flex, but it is pretty expensive. Actually, the connector itself is not very expensive, but the connection to the PCB is pretty expensive for that. You can see it is FPC. It can be flex, but you know, but it is not as flexible as heat seal, but it is sometimes it is flexible enough, but more rigid than heat seal, but still can bend, but it has some radius here. You can see that the radius is pretty big for that. And actually the flex itself is very flexible to make and not very expensive. But the connection to the PCB can be pretty expensive. You can see from here, you can see soldering, you know, use a hot bar to soldering to the PCB can be expensive, you know, and not very convenient. But there is a simple way to connect it. Use a ZIF connector. Use a ZIF connector. You know, just plug in. It's very simple. Here, you can see this sample here. This is a ZIF connector, so you just plug in side and lock it. That will be okay. But this ZIF connector is pretty expensive. You know, this connector can be $1, so that makes the PC connection pretty expensive. But it is a pretty reliable. Here are some questions.